Greetings, YouTube. One of my subscribers made a comment recently, and it got me thinking. A little bit of background here. I had commented about the fact that the Netherlands was a civilized place because they do not allow execution at all since 1983. And her reply was, I don't know if we are more civilized. Maybe we just have different priorities stemming from such a thing as geography. After all, it is no use if you build and maintain your part of a levee and your neighbor doesn't do his or her share of the work. You both get wet feet the next inundation. Compare that to your country, where there is always space to move to when things are not to someone's liking. And that, to me, is an interesting point. Because when you're living in close proximity, as you need to do in a place behind a levee, it encourages a level of cooperation and, I think, responsibility towards your fellow citizen that you don't find in America, because there isn't that same external pressure. In America, we have a lot of physical space. But in actuality, I think that space is illusionary. I don't know if we actually have functional space as much as we'd like to think. There's a lot of space between points in America, but that doesn't mean that there's a lot of space between people in America. And by people, I mean about our interactions with our fellow citizens. Because I think that as far as the society goes, we're almost as close as the people in the Netherlands are. It's just that we've convinced ourselves that we aren't. But we are inextricably linked to each other. We are all part of the same public sphere, and we need to learn how to interact with each other in a healthy way. We already do things in a public sphere all the time. We don't even think about it. Our military, public roads, our phone system, our power grids, fire, police departments, parks and recreation. You get the point. All of these things, public schools, libraries, they're all in the public sphere, and almost all of them are exclusively paid for with tax dollars. And her point is that we have a lot of space, that people in America seem to feel that at any time they want to, they can just pull up stakes and they can head west. Except you can't really do that. The number of people that could actually do a homestead here in America is vanishingly small. It's profoundly difficult to do. And even if you were going to do it, you're going to do it on public roads. And you're going to have to get your land by purchasing it from someone, which is going to require registering that purchase with the U.S. government, which is kind of the point of a government, and to help you decide where your property ends and where someone else's begins. It may well be the first job of any government at all, of the first government we ever had, delineating between property rights. And even if for the hardest of the hardcore militias out there in Idaho on their private compounds, they may consider themselves to be isolated. And even if they were to achieve their most perfect form of isolation, where they had no contact with the outside world at all, they would still be benefiting from the protection of the U.S. military. And under a perfect form of isolation, they would be contributing nothing to the public sphere to support that military, so they would basically be parasites. Another of my commenters said something to me last week as well. And he said that if we lower taxes, I, personally, Tetsubo, would end up with more money in their pocket. And you were correct. I would have more money in my pocket if we lower taxes. But I pay my taxes, and I do so without question, because it helps the public sphere. And the attitude that having more money in my pocket is more important than providing funding for the public sphere, to me, is a really selfish, narrow-minded, and short-sighted way of looking at the world. Not one that I endorse. But it is a policy, an actual political platform, put forth by conservative politicians across our nation. Democrats, the Blue Dogs, Republicans of all varieties, Tea Party members, and Libertarians. They have a very much a take care of yourself, privatize everything, have nothing in the public sphere. To me, that's not a healthy attitude. That's very much saying that you the individual is more important than the public sphere. And while there are aspects about our private lives which are more important than the public sphere, what I'm doing right now, First Amendment, my Second Amendment rights, my Fourth Amendment rights, there are things that we need to place above the individual. We need to make sure that we take care of ourselves collectively so that we can then prosper as individuals. Yes, I know, that makes me sound like a raving socialist because I'm basically a raving socialist. But if everyone doesn't contribute to their maintaining those levees, then we all get wet feet. And a lot of the conservative stances seem to be that they will do anything possible to avoid taking care of their fair share of the levy. That they would, in fact, be quite happy if all of us drown, rather than do anything that could even be potentially viewed as cooperative and socialist. And that isn't any way to live. To me, that isn't even sane. Because if we don't come together and learn to live together and work together, we're all doomed to die apart. And I don't want that either. I'm reminded of one of the most famous sayings that we have here in the United States that the conservatives seem to have forgotten. E pluribus unum.